Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to work on an Okuma reel that I haven't seen before. It's the Okuma Sentara. It's a 6-ball bearing reel that I picked up at a reasonable price on a flea market because of this. All this line has been tangled up, and of course when you go to try to do it, it just gets tangled again. And you can bargain with folks like that. It's also dirty, very dirty. It's an example of what's probably been sitting around in a flea market or in somebody's garage or whatever. It hasn't been taken very good care of, but it's a 6-ball bearing reel, and I have the hopes that that this one is going to get restrung, cleaned up, and be a beautiful fishing reel for somebody in the near future. So I'm going to stop the video because I don't want to get too started with all of this stuff in the middle and tangled up. It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to remove the line from this reel. I'm going to clean it up in an ultrasonic cleaner, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how to take this reel apart, service it, and get it fishing again. So the first thing you do is you take that spool off. There's no sense trying to take the line off when it's all wrapped around. There's a good idea here that it's wrapped around the axle shaft, and you can only cause more damage by trying to pull that out. So remove that adjuster button, pull that out. Of course, it's wrapped around quite a lot in here, and that costs the seller some money, because the first thing you do when you're evaluating whether you want to make a purchase of some used equipment is it working? And if it's not working, well, points are deducted, right? You can also see all the dirt here. Okay, so let's put that back on. I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to take that line off. We'll come back. I'll remove some of those parts, stop the video again, and do some cleaning there, and then we'll show you the completion of this service. Before I go, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody who's keeping us safe during the pandemic: the fire, police, first aid, rescue, EMT, all of the people in our supply chains, and all of the civil servants, the sanitation, the transportation, and the like. Everybody who's going to their work to make our lives easier. Thank you for all it is that you do. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, so the line is off. And you should take that line off when you're doing an annual servicing of a reel, regardless of whether it needs to be cleaned as badly as this one or not. Just because the line will age. It will get the sun and the UV damage from it, and that will cause these reels to fail. So I was looking to see if there was a 60 or a 70 designation on this one. I'm not seeing it. I'm going to guess that this is a 50 or 60 reel. It's a nice size reel in general, and it's a very versatile reel. It can go pier, it can go boats, it can go from shore, surf casting, and the like. Let's just do a final test on this. Well, it's kind of running a whole lot smoother to begin with. Let's make sure that the override's in place. It is. And I'm not familiar with this one. I've done a lot of work on Avengers and Coronados and the like, but I haven't seen the Sentara. I'm not sure what it is. Whatever the coating is, there's white plastic that's been the coating on that. Let's make sure that the bail works. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take the parts off, and we'll go do some cleaning. That is a multiple series of approaches here. You can use a general purpose degreaser, like a Purple Power that I have here. You can use a rod and reel cleaner, like the Pen rod and reel cleaner. If it's stubborn, you can use a little bit more aggressive cleaner, like Flit's Metal Pre-Clean. And if it's really hard, nasty, dried grease, after you scrape it out, you can use an ultrasonic cleaner. So I think I'm going to, just based on this condition of this spool, I'll probably go with the Flit's. Flit's is a very easy to use spray-on bottle or to rinse off, but it's got a little bit of an acid in there, so just be careful. You can see that the reel hasn't been maintained. There's a lot of dirt and grease inside. And whenever I clean a reel, I want to get the drags out of there. I don't want cleaner on there to damage or corrupt the drag system. Now in this case, we've got felt washers, so you clearly don't want to use some kind of a degreaser that may degrade the felt. A lot of people ask on the felt, is it a good washer to have? Well, everybody's I got their opinions. My opinion is that the felt washers are fine. They hold up. They need to be oiled, and they need to be kept lubricated. But unless you're really fighting big fish, felt washers are fine. And felt washers were used in the Penn, Fierce, and Pursuit lines up through the first and second generations. Felt washers have been used by Shimano, and there's nothing particularly wrong with the felt washer. It's just that the perception is that there's something there. If you do wind up tearing them, if you've been using a reel for some heavy-duty fishing and you're tearing those up, well then of course you want to move over, and you can get Carbon Tex replacements. Just need the washer sizes in order to do that. We got some line trapped underneath here. All right, so other than that, a lot of dirt and the like will take care of that. Let's go ahead and remove the handle. Now, whenever you're going to service a handle or a reel, turn the reel. If the button is moving on the other side, it means that the handle has a rod coming through, and it's retained by a side plate screw, and that's what's going on here. So we'll take that off. This is a collapsible handle. It's also an interchangeable handle, so that if you don't want to reel with your left hand, which is how reels are generally set up from the factory, you can turn this around and reel it with your right hand. They're set up for a left-hand drive because most right-handed people want to use their strong arm to maintain control of the rod, and that leaves their weaker hand to hold down the reel, do the reeling assignment there. And I think the proportion, if I remember, of right-handed people to left-handed people in the general population is about 9 or 10 to 1, so that's why you find them set up on the other side. There's no right or wrong answer. A lot of folks that are right-handed like to crank with their right hand. That's fine. But underneath, rods that are mounted from underneath, generally a right-hander would have it on the left side, and rods where the reel is mounted above the pole, like a bait caster and the like, generally it's on the other side. Just kind of a rule of thumb, or a rule of hand, if you will. Okay, there's 4 screws here holding this on. It's easier to clean up here if you take that side case off. And also we're going to find out what's underneath here. If we can remove it simple enough, we will. And that'll enable us to maybe take that whole plastic case and put it in an ultrasonic cleaner or something. Or we'll figure out what to do with that once we kind of get a little bit better picture of what's going on with the reel. So if you like these kinds of videos, if you like reel repair as a hobby, or maybe you've got a small business going or something, and you want to learn more about those fishing reels, then by all means come on and subscribe. And if you do subscribe, hit the notification button. That's going to help you to learn the art of reel repair, or at least what I can teach. I'm trying to teach this as somewhat of a legacy. So here's an interesting one. This case probably belongs in more than just one fishing reel. You'll notice we have a bearing on here, but the case has slots for a plastic bushing. And a lot of plastic bushings are held in place so that they don't spin, and they have 2 tags coming off of them. Well, this case has the tags, but it has a bearing on the main gear, so go figure. I like the looks of this one. It's a traditional reel. We have a ball bearing on the main gear here. There's a couple of shims underneath. Pay attention to that. It looks like we have a main gear, gear, crosswind block, and an axle shaft, so that's what we're going to remove next. This reel seemed to be making a little bit of noise, but you know, with all that dirt, it's kind of hard to say what the cause of it is. And as we get inside here, it kind of looks like it's probably just because it's dry. Hold your hand on that crosswind block and remove the axle shaft by pulling up. This will give us an indication of the dirt in there, and there's enough. All of those pieces and parts are going into my parts tray. It's the bottom of a jug, and helps me to keep those identified and keep them within my control. All right, so now we should be able to get the main gear out. I'm noticing we're struggling with the side bearing here. So we have a 3-ball bearing reel in this case, probably 4. It said 6. I'm guessing I have another ball bearing in here underneath the crosswind block. We'll take that out in a moment and we'll verify that. 3 on the sides, those are the important ones. A pinion bearing, a side plate bearing on one side, and a side plate bearing on the other side of the main gear. Folks ask me what's the optimal amount. Well, there's a race to see how many ball bearings you can pack in a reel. But my optimal amount or minimal amount is 2, and preferably 3. Those are the ones on the main gear and the pinion gear. The rest I really don't care about. I think, yeah, from a convenience standpoint, it probably means something, but after a while I think it's just tiresome. All right, well, we do not have a bearing behind there. That's just a side case stud that comes off with this. Those parts go into the tray. We'll have a bearing up top here. We probably have a line guide bearing. Yeah, we do. So that's where one of the bearings is. It's up in the line guide. And I wouldn't be surprised if the handle has the other bearing in it. It's spinning very freely. So there's probably a bearing in the handle here that makes the 6. I don't spend a lot of time trying to count where these things are. It doesn't really matter much to me. And it may be that we have an instant anti-reverse on this as well. Okay, took the set screw out. We're going to go ahead and find my little tool here somewhere on my bench. I've got a Mitchell tool here, which is a 12 millimeter deep socket. You don't need the Mitchell tool. Notice that we have a sign here that says on and off, and it gives you an arrow direction. So if you want to take it off, it comes off in the clockwise manner. At least they tell you that. Sometimes you're going to try and take these off. There's no sign up top there telling you the orientation on it, and you're going to go crazy trying to get that stuff fixed. All right, this is our anti-reverse. It is an instant anti-reverse, so they're probably counting that as a gear. This one has an instant anti-reverse override. Take a look on that spring there. Notice how it is mounted. And what we're doing here is we're pulling this out so that we can get to the pinion bearing. If you have questions on this reel or any reel or reel maintenance in general, if you want to leave them in the comments section, I'll do my best to answer them for you. And if you're stuck on something, maybe you started a reel repair and got stuck along the way, that's okay. I recommend that you take pictures, that you go find schematics and the like, but if I can help you get unstuck, I'll try to do that too. Okay, this is our setup here. Just want to see if we can remove the... We're going to have to pay attention to this spring in order to remove everything, so I'm going to grab that with a pliers so that I don't shoot the spring. And actually I believe, it's going to get interesting, but I believe I can take that spring off of the carrier and leave it on that little post. I can. Just be aware of this. You might find yourself turning something one way or another and then that spring is gone. But that'll help us remove the rest of this. And as it turns out, I kind of didn't have to do that. I just had to relax that grip there. But that's good. And this is the pinion gear and bearing assembly. So we're going to go ahead and take that off. Take a picture here. That's a good place to take the picture. You have the bearing, you have the collar, you have the gear. The gear's got a lot of dirt on it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab a little brush. Clean all of that out. You want to check to make sure that there's no obvious burrs or trapped grease or the like, and that they're not banged up or damaged. All right, I am going to vote not to go to the ultrasonic cleaner with this one. What I'm going to vote to do here is to re-lube and just a light spray of some penetrating oil around the outside just to capture some of the floating debris there. And then we're going to reset this because I don't want to boil this with the anti-reverse in there, and I don't think it's needed. What is needed is kind of a good cleaning, and after we go back and lube this and install, we'll be able to go to the outside case and clean that up as well. While I'm at it, there's a bearing inside the case, so I'm going to give that a good drink of oil. I'm sure it hasn't had an oiling in a while. And we'll go ahead and we'll use fishing reel grease to lube up the pinion gear, and I'm going to use a lot of it because what was in here was dried, and I think the vibration I was feeling in this reel was probably caused by the lack of grease. All right, that's the pinion gear. Next up then, we go back to the sleeve. And we go back to the bearing. And then we can mount all of this back into the channel. Now, on a anti-reverse, you do not want to oil that anti-reverse clutch. That whole thing works on friction, and the idea behind it is to leave the friction there. If you oil and grease it, you're going to run into trouble at some point because you'll lose the friction that you need for it to work properly. Right, I'm just trying to find my smaller pliers. I keep a box on the bench. Everybody complains about it because there's so many darn tools in here, and folks kind of got tired of watching me dig for all of my pieces and parts. At the end of the day, if I keep it within range, I don't lose my train of thought, and I generally can find the piece I need to make this work. Okay, so we have a small needle nose pliers here. Just going to try and grab that tag and see if I can't get that back into the hole from whence it came. And I did. Success. There you go. And how do we know it's a success? Well, if we turn this, we should have an instant anti-reverse, and that's exactly what's happening now. And if we override it, we should spool backwards, which we do, back and forth. And then we'll go back to the set motion, and we'll do that. Okay, I want to lock this down now. There's a stud here, which lines with the small hole. And then you want to just make sure that the other holes line up. In this case, it doesn't. It needs to be flipped around and over. That was a head scratcher. Okay. And we'll put our 3 screws back in, and we'll do a little cleaning. So this one is about lubrication. It's about checking for worn or broken parts. It's about a good cleaning because this one's been sitting around a long time. And we've yet to deal with the dirt and that on the rotor and on the spool, but we've taken care to note what was going on inside the reel, because after all, that's the one where the work gets done. The rest of it is cosmetic in terms of do you have a pretty spool or is the dirt off the reel. In my case, all that dirt helped because it got me a relatively low price on this reel, and I knew what I was going to do anyway, so that was all to my benefit. All right, we're going to just keep going on the inside of this case. We're going to take some grease around the back end for that crosswind block or gear. We're going to do the same thing on the crosswind gear. You're going to check it to make sure that there's no damage on there. If it is, you'd have to find a replacement part. Okuma is in California. They're a very good service department there. They can generally get you the pieces and parts. Sometimes a reel like this, I don't know what the age on this reel is. I'm guessing it's not current line by any stretch of the imagination. Sometimes the age says that they no longer support the parts, but they may know of a substitute part for that. So don't be afraid to ask if they said the part's not available. Ask them if there's a substitute. As I mentioned, that case sure looks like it belongs on more than one reel. And if that's the case, I just put the wrong screw in here. Funny how they both work, but they're not the right ones. I have set them off on the 2 different sides of my my parts tray there, just to make sure. Turns out I had the wrong one. It's okay. Get the right one. Make sure it turns. It does. Come on back to that main gear then. Same idea here. I put a towel under it when I use the brush just to keep the debris off my bench. I don't want sand or grease or something from one of these pieces to go into the next reel I service. Just going to use a pick just to make sure that the channels are clear. They're clear. This is a stamped gear, I'm guessing, and there's some unevenness to the gear itself, but remember, that's what I found when I started this. I said that this wheel is running a little bit rough, so I'm thinking that there's some dried grease in here, so I'm using just a basic pick. That have all kinds of these little picks around. I tend to go to flea markets every now and then, and while I might be searching for a fishing reel or tackle or something to make a subject video on, like this one, every now and then I'll find a pick that just kind of says just can't have enough of them. That's one of my favorites. This one belonged to my father-in-law at one point, but so be it. Okay, I've checked all of these. The teeth are in good condition. I'm going to go ahead and grease this up. And that will conclude the internal works that I can deal with before I do a cleaning. I'm going to get some grease on the back end here. Also get some grease onto the shaft on both sides. We can reinstall the main gear. Like that. Grab my crosswind gear. It's a dried channel in the back there. There's nothing in there that can degrade the performance as well. Get the old grease out. New grease in. Make sure you get some grease onto the face of that crosswind gear. We're going to go ahead and put the block in. And then we're just going to set this aside for a moment, because I want to clean the rotor before I install the axle shaft. I want to clean the spool. So we're going to shut this off and we'll come back and service. Okay, let's conclude this then. So I did the cleaning up. It came out very nice. I'm happy with it. There's a little bit of kind of dust and dirt still in there, but for the most part it came out very nice. All of the dirt and debris was cleaned up. I did notice when I was doing this rotor, we were talking before about parts being used on multiple reels. Well, here's a good example. This has got a sawtooth underneath the rotor that would traditionally be associated with a drag that had a dog rather than the instant anti-reverse. There's no dog here that can in any way intersect with this rotor, so this piece came from a different reel and just got reused into the design of this reel, just like we were talking about the slots on the side case here that would accept a bushing. So there you go. Just kind of casually mention that. All right, I was very happy. I used a combination of products. I did mention Flitz before, and I used Flitz Metal Pre-Clean. That's kind of available online. I also used this Purple Power, and I also used the Pen Rod and Reel Cleaner. So I was relying on a couple of chemical solutions, but in the end I'm very happy with what turned out to be a good dusting and a cleaning on these reels, and not a lot of effort or elbow grease required. Just seems to be a little bit of wetness there, but that's good. All right, we didn't oil the slots for the bail. Let's go ahead and do that. And we also mentioned that there's a roller bearing in here, so let's give a good drink of oil to that as well. We're going to put the rotor on now. We're going to begin that reassembly. So the rotor goes on first. And of course, just as I noticed that, there's a little bit of residue left over there. All right, there's that 12mm nut. Remember, it said to take it off in a clockwise manner, so you're going to put this nut back on kind of counterclockwise. Counterintuitive and counterclockwise. All right, start it by hand so that you don't cross strip it. Once you get it going, tighten it up. In this case, you can probably use a wrench. That lip over the side is not that tough. All right, tighten it up, and then once you got it tightened down, go ahead and get that set screw, which is going to keep it from rotating. This is the one I tried to put into the crosswind gear before. Interestingly enough, the threading was fine. The head was too big. That's what was causing it to have a little bit of a problem there. All right, the bearing and the shims go on next. The shims go to the inside of that. Some folks ask why those shims are there. They're set at the factory to align the gear to make sure it properly meshes with the pinion gear. It has the right spacing so it doesn't get slop in it. I'll go ahead and put these back on then. Since it's a bearing, not a bushing, you don't have to worry about where the tabs are with that. And then we'll put a light coat of grease onto the axle shaft here. And we'll slide that through and connect that to the crosswind block. This is off camera, I apologize. You just simply slid it down in between the main gear, lined up the hole there, and then we can put the little screw that's going to hold that in place back where it came from. I was having such good luck with those small spots. Let's do that again. So traditional design, there's nothing really fancy going on here. There is a good amount of ball bearings in this. Here's a thing to point out in case you lost it. It almost shot out on me here. There is a U-clip spring. You can see it just wanting to come out here. That does hold tension on this anti-reverse override. Make sure that it's set in. You don't want to lose that spring. And it does need to be pushed in flush with the case. Okay, speaking of that case, that will be next. Oops, still a little bit of residue here on from the cleaning. Take that up. Case goes on next. And nice snap there, tells us that we got it right. There was 4 screws. They were all the same size. I made sure to note that on the way of removing them. I'm kind of excited to see how this reel did. As I mentioned, I got it for a decent price because, well, 1, it's used, but 2, more importantly, it was all dirty and the line was all tangled on it, and the seller kind of gave up on it. So with a little bit of work, you can get these right and you can have a good deal. And what we'll finish with, after we put the handle on, we're going to finish with that set of washers there, just to make sure that you see how to service the felt washers. And then we're going to get this one fishing again. Some people ask me about battery-powered screwdrivers. Can they use them, or the electric screwdrivers? And I don't recommend that because cases like this have a lot of flex in them, and if you over-torque these screws, you can cause a jamming or a pinch with the screws. So I tend to avoid them. I try to do what I can by hand, and that way I know that I'm not going to crack the case or bind the main gears or do anything that could affect the reel adversely. The handle goes on. Again, this can go in either way, your choice. Since most of them are set up as a left-hand drive, we're going to go put it back from the way it was with the left-hand drive. And we're going to set this aside. We'll do that reset on the drag washers, and we'll attach and give it a spin. Alright, so we have a nice clean cavity. You have 3 felt and 3 metal, and you have a solid machined bottom of this one, so the felt washers are going to start this off. And as I mentioned, the biggest thing you want to do with a felt washer is soak it with oil to keep it flexible. The fishing reel oil you're using is fine, but a lot of good dabs, and that'll get that done properly. Metal goes next. Put that second felt washer in there. And we're fortunate, these things were sticking to the metal washers. We've cleaned them up. We've taken the residue off of them, but I'm sure that the drag wasn't working very well in this reel. There's 2 slots and 2 ears on that middle washer, so make sure that they go in accordingly. Last one, we'll make sure, and you can be liberal with this. You can splash it on pretty good there. Top washer next, and our little star goes in the grooves inside the spool. So hold one end so it doesn't shoot, and just kind of work it around with your finger strength. Make sure that it's in that slot. There's nothing other than to no job other than just to hold that drag stack in place. So it's sitting high now. There's movement in that drag stack, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Alright, then we'll put this back on. Certainly looks a whole lot better than when we started this. Tighten down on that drag adjuster. going to tighten it all the way down, make sure we have those drags. We do. I'm going to back it up a little bit. Oh yeah, now it's spinning nicely. It's doing what it should do. And I recommend, if you're not going to use the reel right away, back off the drag. You don't need to press all that oil and that out of there. Let's give it a spin. Well, there you go. So we have a nice little Sentara, and just needs a little bit more tightening on that handle there. It's been cleaned up. This one's ready to go fishing. It's a smooth operator. It should be with the 6-ball bearings. Let's give it a flip here with the bail, make sure that's working. So there you go. The Okuma Sentara, I'm going to guess this is a 50 or 60 size reel. I haven't been able to find that designation on here, but that's okay. 6-ball bearings, you saw how to take it apart and service it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody well.